Well, hello, girls. You know what? I gotta grab myself a drink. I'm gonna need it. Well, this is quite the turnout. It says I got one person in here. Thanks for putting that out, Mare. I'm just going to look at this book and see how long these chapters are. Okay, so this book's trying to kill me. There's like a short one, which I'll read. The other one is actually quite long, but oh well. I can hear the geese coming back. All right, I'm just gonna start. Well, this is quite the title for this chapter. It states, film star, 4 others dead in blood orgy. Sharon Tate, victim in ritual murders. Jesus. The headlines dominated the front pages of the afternoon papers, became the big news on radio and TV. The bizarre nature of the crime, the number of victims and their prominence, a beautiful movie star, the heiress to a coffee fortune, her jet-set Playboy paramour, an internationally known hairstylist, would combine to make this one of the most publicized murder cases in American history. And I forgot to add Artsy Nurse. Hey, Tammy. There you go. Exceeded only by the Lindbergh kidnapping murder case and the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Even the staid New York Times, which rarely reports crime on its front page, did so the next day and many days thereafter. The accounts that day and the next were notable for the unusual amount of detail they contained. There she is. Oh no, I'm echoing. Hey, Sassy. Am I still echoing? I don't know how to fix that. Damn. How's it going, Artsy Nurse? I don't know. I'm echoing, I guess. Do you hear an echo?
I did a little bit at first. I don't know about right now, though.
Okay, I don't hear one. Just yell at me if it isn't. I don't even know how I'd fix it, though. Damn. Oh, it's just you? Okay, just let me know. The accounts that day and the next were notable for the unusual amount of detail they contained. So much information had been given out, in fact, that the detectives would have difficulty finding polygraph keys for questioning suspects. Hi, Earthling. In any homicide, it is standard practice to withhold certain information which presumably only the police and the killer/killers know. If a suspect confesses or agrees to a polygraph examination, these keys can then be used to determine if he is telling the truth. Owing to the many leaks the detectives assigned to the case, the Tate case, as the press was already calling the murders, could only come up with 5. 1, that the knife used was probably a bayonet. 2, that the gun was probably a .22 caliber revolver. 3, the exact dimensions of the rope as well as the way it was looped and tied. And 4 and 5, that a pair of horn-rimmed glasses and a buck knife had been found. The amount of information unofficially released so bothered LAPD brass that a tight lid was clamped on further disclosures. They didn't please the reporters. Also, lacking hard news, many turned to conjecture and speculation. In the days that followed, a monumental amount of false information was published. It was widely reported, for example, that Sharon Tate's unborn baby had been ripped from her womb, that one or both of her breasts had been slashed off, that several of the victims had been sexually mutilated. Sorry, I haven't read this yet. The towel over Sebring's face became a white hood, KKK, or a black hood for Satanists, depending on which paper or magazine you read. That is insane that these papers would write that without any knowledge. At this point, they're just making shit up. That's disgusting. Wow. Anyways, when it came to the man charged with the murders, however, there was a paucity of information. It was presumed initially that the police were maintaining silence to protect Garrettson's rights. It was also presumed that LAPD had to have a strong case against him or they wouldn't have arrested him. A Pasadena paper, picking up bits and pieces of information, sought to fill the gap. It stated that when the officers found Garrettson, he asked, "When are the detectives going to see me?" The implication was obvious. Garrettson knew what happened. Garrettson did ask this, but it was as he was being taken through the gate, long after his arrest, and the question was in response to an earlier comment by DeRosa. Quoting unidentified policemen, the paper also noted, "They said the slender youth and a rip in one knee of his pants and his living quarters in the guest cottage showed signs of a struggle." The media did the same thing with the Black Dahlia. Yeah, it's just gross. I actually want to do that next, the Black Dahlia. I'd love to read that book, and yeah, I'm just thinking about it. During the first few days, a total of 43 officers would visit the crime scene, looking for weapons and other evidence. In searching the loft above the living room, Sergeant Mike McGann found a film can containing a roll of videotape. Sergeant Ed Henderson took it to the police academy, which had screening facilities. The film showed Sharon and Roman Polanski making love. With a certain delicacy, the tape was not booked into evidence, but was returned to the loft where it had been found. There's a star on here. It says, one writer would later claim that the police found a vast collection of pornography in the residence, including numerous films and still shots of famous Hollywood stars engaged in various sexual acts. Aside from the above and several unexposed rolls of videotape, the only photographs found anywhere on the property were a set of wedding pictures and a large number of publicity shots of Sharon Tate. The same writer also claimed that a number of black hoods were found in the loft. Apparently, he created them out of the same material as his photos, for nothing even resembling a hood was found. Yeah, it is a sad story or thing. That's my ice clanking. I just wanted to take a sip. Last time I read, oh my God, I didn't even realize that my throat was going to kill me for a few days. People who sing and read like this for a living, I praise them highly because I sure as hell can't do it. In addition to searching the premises, detectives interviewed neighbors asking if they had seen any strange people in the area. Ray Aston recalled that 2 or 3 months before there had been a large party at 10050 Cielo Drive, the guests arriving in hippie garb. He got the impression, however, that they weren't actually hippies, as most arrived in Rolls Royces and Cadillacs. Emmett Steele, who had been awakened by the barking of his hunting dogs the previous night, remembered that in recent weeks someone had been racing a dune buggy up and down the hills late at night, but he never had a close look at the driver and passengers. Most of those interviewed, however, claimed they had neither seen nor heard anything out of the ordinary. The detectives were left with far more questions than answers. However, they were hopeful one person could pull the puzzle together for them, William Garretson. The detectives downtown were less optimistic. Following his arrest, the 19-year-old had been taken to West Los Angeles jail and interrogated. The officers found his answers stuporous and non-responsive, and were all of the opinion that he was under the residual effect of some drug. It was also possible, as Garretson himself claimed, that he had slept little the previous night, just a few hours in the morning, and that he was exhausted and very scared. Shortly after this, Garretson retained the services of attorney Barry Tarlow. A second interview with Tarlow present took place at Parker Center, headquarters of the Los Angeles Police Department. As far as the police were concerned, it too was unproductive. Garretson claimed that although he lived on the property, he had little contact with the people in the main house. He said that he'd only had one visitor the previous night, a boy named Steve Parent, who showed up about 11:45 and left about a half an hour later. Questioned about Parent, Garretson said he didn't know him well. He hitched a ride up the canyon with him one night a couple of weeks ago, and on getting out of the car at the gate, had told Steve if he was ever in the neighborhood to drop in. Garretson, who lived by himself in the back of the house, except for the dogs, said he'd extended similar invitations to others. When Steve showed up, he was surprised. No one else ever had, but Steve didn't stay long, leaving after learning that Garretson wasn't interested in buying a clock radio Steve had for sale. The police did not, at this time, connect Garrettson's visitor with the youth in the Rambler, possibly because Garretson had earlier failed to identify him. After conferring with Tarlow, Garretson agreed to take a polygraph examination, and one was scheduled for the following afternoon. 12 hours had passed since the discovery of the bodies. John Doe, 85, remained unidentified. Police Lieutenant Robert Madlock, who had been in charge of the investigation during the several hours before it was assigned to homicide, would later state, "At the time we first found the victim's car at the scene, we were going 14 different directions at once. So many things had to be done. I guess we just didn't have time to follow up on the car registration." Wow. All day, Wilfred and Juanita Parent had waited and worried. Their 18-year-old son, Stephen, hadn't come home the previous night. Didn't call, didn't leave word. He'd never done anything like that before, Juanita Parent said. About 8 p.m., aware that his wife was too distraught to cook dinner, Wilfred Parent took her and her 3 older children to a restaurant. "Maybe when we get back," he told his wife, "Steve will be there." Isn't that sick? They didn't even tell the parents nothing. Wow. From outside the gate of 1005 Cielo, it was possible to make out the license number on the white Rambler, ZLR 694. A reporter wrote it down, then ran his own check through the Department of Motor Vehicles, learning that the registered owner was Wilfred E. or Juanita D. Parent, 11214 Bryant Drive, Elmont, California. By the time he arrived in Elmont, a Los Angeles suburb some 25 miles from Cielo Drive, he found no one at home. Questioning the neighbors, he learned that the family did have a boy in the late teens. He also learned the name of the family priest, Father Robert Byrne, of the Church of the Nativity, and called on by him. Byrne knew the youth and his family well. Though the priest was sure Steve didn't know any movie stars and that all this was some mistake, he agreed to accompany the reporter to the county morgue. On the way, he talked about Steve. He was a stereo bug, Father Byrne said. If you ever wanted to know anything about phonographs or radios, Steve had the answers. Father Byrne held great hopes for his future. In the interim, LAPD discovered the identity of the youth through a print and license check. Shortly after the parents returned home, an El Monte policeman appeared on the door and handed Wilfred Parent a card with a number on it and told him to call it. He left without saying anything else. Parent dialed the number. "County Coroner's Office," a man answered. Confused, Parent identified himself and explained about the policeman and the card. The call was transferred to a deputy coroner who told him, "Your son has apparently been involved in a shooting." "Is he dead?" Parent asked. Stunned, his wife, hearing the question, became hysterical. "We have a body down here," the deputy coroner replied, "and we believe it's your son." He then went on to describe physical characteristics they matched. Parent hung up the phone and began sobbing. Later, understandably, bitter, he remarked, "All I can say is that it was a hell of a way to tell somebody that their boy was dead." About the same time, Father Byrne viewed the body and made the identification. John Doe, 85, became Stephen Earl Parent, an 18-year-old hi-fi enthusiast from Elmont. It was 5 a.m. before the parents went to bed. The wife and I finally just put the kids in bed with us, and the 5 of us just held on to each other and cried until we slept. That is the most saddest thing I think I've heard. How could they do that? This whole thing was like botched. So the reporter found out that the guy that was assassinated in his car was, in fact, Stephen Parent. That the cops couldn't even do that for the parents. Yes, I did know that, Angel Eyes. Yep. Yeah, very scary. I'm just going to check comments here. I know, Mara. I can't still get that out of my eyes, like, thinking about it. Yeah, Mara's awesome with the links.
Yeah, Mare, where it says like Sharon must have been so scared for her unborn child. That comment I can add to a little bit. She was the last to die, and she did beg for her life and for the life of her child. And they flat out told her, you know, bitch, I have no mercy for you. You're gonna die. Before they killed her. Absolutely horrific.
See, I thought she was one of the first ones that they killed, but she was actually the last. So she saw everything with everybody pretty much. And then.
Yep.
Wow. All right, I'm going to continue. About 9 that same Saturday night, August 9th, 1969, Lino and Rosemary LaBianca and Susan Struthers, Rosemary's 21-year-old daughter, by previous marriage, left Lake Isabella for the long drive back to Los Angeles. The lake, popular resort area, was some 150 miles from LA. Suzanne's brother, Frank Struthers Jr., 15, had been vacationing at the lake with a friend, Jim Safi, whose family had a cabin there. Rosemary and Lino had driven up the previous Tuesday to leave their speedboat for the boys to use, then returned Saturday morning to pick up Frank and the boat. However, the boys were having such a good time that the LaBiancas agreed to let Frank stay over another day, and they were returning now, without him, driving their 1968 Green Thunderbird, towing the speedboat on a trailer behind. Lino, and the president of a chain of Los Angeles supermarkets, was 44, Italian, and at 220 pounds, somewhat overweight. Rosemary, a trim, attractive brunette of 38, was a former car hop who, after a series of waitress jobs and a bad marriage, had opened her own dress shop, the Boutique Carriage, on North Figueroa in Los Angeles, and made a big success of it. She and Lino had been married since 1959. Because of the boat, they couldn't drive at the speed Lino preferred and fell behind most of the Saturday night freeway traffic that was speeding toward Los Angeles. Like many others that night, they had the radio on and heard the news of the Tate murders. According to Suzanne, it seemed particularly to disturb Rosemary, who a few weeks earlier had told a close friend, "Someone is coming in our house while we're away. Things have been gone through and the dogs are outside the house when they should be inside." Wow. About 1 a.m., the LaBiancas dropped Suzanne off at her apartment on Greenwood Place. In the Los Feliz district of Los Angeles, Lino and Rosemary lived in the same neighborhood at 3301 Waverly Drive, not far from Griffith Park. The LaBiancas did not immediately return home, but first drove to the corner of Hillhurst and Franklin. John Fuckianos had a newsstand on the corner, recognized the Green Thunderbird Plus boat as it pulled into the standard station across the street, and while it was making a U-turn that would bring it alongside his stand, he reached for a copy of the LA Herald Examiner, Sunday edition, and a racing form. Lena was a regular customer. To Fuckianos, the LaBiancas seemed tired from their long trip. Business was slow, and they chatted for a few minutes about Tate, the event of the day. That was the big news. They would recall that Mrs. LaBianca seemed very shaken by the deaths. He had some extra news fillers for the Sunday Los Angeles Times, which featured the murders, and he gave them one without charge. He watched as they drove away. He did not notice the exact time, except that it was sometime between 1 and 2 a.m., probably closer to the latter, as not long after they left the bars closed, and there was a flurry of business. As far as I know, John was the last person, excluding their killers, to see Rosemary and Lino LaBianca alive. At noon, the hall outside the autopsy room on the first floor of the Hall of Justice was packed with reporters and TV cameramen, all awaiting the coroner's announcement. They would have a long wait. Although the autopsies had begun at 9:50 and a number of deputy coroners had been pressed into service, it would be 3 p.m. before the last autopsy was completed. Dr. R.C. Henry conducted the Folger Sebring autopsies. Dr. Gaston Herrera, those of Dr. Nauchi, sorry, some of these last names I'm trying to pronounce, but I'm pretty sure I'm screwing them up. Dr. Noguchi supervised and directed all four. In addition, he personally conducted the other autopsy, which began at 11:20 a.m. Sharon Marie Polanski, 10050 Cielo Drive, female, Caucasian, 26 years, 5'3", 135 pounds, blonde hair, hazel eyes. Victim's occupation, actress. Oh, I'm reading Helter Skelter, Dana. You grew up with all this. You did, Melissa, eh? Autopsy reports are abrupt documents. Cold, factual, they can indicate how the victims died and give clues as to their last hours, but nowhere in them do their subjects emerge, even briefly, as people. Each report is, in its own way, the sum total of a life. Yet there are very few glimpses as to how that life was lived. No likes, dislikes, love, hate, fears, aspirations, or other human emotions, just a final clinical summing up. The body is normally developed. The pancreas is grossly unremarkable. The heart weighs 340 grams and is symmetrical. Yet the victims had lived. Each had a past. Much of Sharon Tate's story sounded like a studio press release. It seemed she had always wanted to be an actress. At age 6 months, she had been Miss Tiny Tot of Dallas. At 16 years, Miss Richland was assigned to San Pedro. She would hitchhike into nearby Los Angeles, haunting the studios. In addition to her ambition, she had at least one other thing in her favor. She was a very beautiful girl. She acquired an agent who succeeded in getting her a few commercials. Then in 1963, an audition for the TV series Petticoat Junction, producer Martin Ranoshoff saw the pretty 21-year-old on the set, and according to studio, Flaherty told her, "Sweetie, I'm going to make you a star." The star was a long time ascending. Singing, dancing, and acting lessons were interspersed with bit parts, usually wearing a black wig. In the Beverly Hillbillies, Petticoat Junction, and 2 Ranshaw films, the Americanization of Emily and the Sandpiper, while the latter film, co-starring Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, was being filmed in Big Sur. Sharon fell in love with the magnificently scenic coastline. Whenever she wanted to escape the Hollywood hassle, she fled there. Scrubbed of makeup, she would check into rustic Deacon's Big Sur Inn, often alone, sometimes with girlfriends, and walk the trails, sun at the beach, and blend in with the regulars at Nepenthe, I think. Many did not know until after her death that she was an actress. According to close friends, though Sharon Tate looked the part of a starlet, she didn't live up to at least one portion of that image. She was not promiscuous. Her relationships were few and rarely casual, at least on her part. She seemed attracted to dominant men, while in Hollywood, she had a long affair with a French actor, given to insane rages. He once beat her so badly, she had to be taken to the UCLA Medical Center for treatment. Wow. LAPD learned of him from Sharon's parents. They also learned from one of Sebring's ex-girlfriends that he had had an argument with the hairstylist a few nights before the murder. In one of the Hollywood discotheques, after checking the man's alibi, they cleared him of any possible involvement in the murders. The argument itself was minor. He had interrupted Sebring while he was trying to pick up a girl. Shortly after this, in 1963, Jay Sebring spotted Sharon at a studio prevailed upon a friend for an introduction, and after brief but much publicized courtship, they became lovers, a relationship which lasted until she met Roman Polanski. It was 1965 before Ranoshoff decided the protege was ready for her first featured role, in Eye of the Devil, which starred Deborah Kerr and David Niven. Listed 7th in the credits, Sharon Tate played a country girl with bewitching powers. She had less than a dozen lines. Her primary role was to look beautiful, which she did. This was to be true of almost all her movies. In the film, Niven became the victim of a hooded cult which practiced ritual sacrifice. Though set in France, the film was made in London, and it was there in the summer of 1966 that she met Roman Polanski. Polanski was at this time 33 and already acclaimed as one of Europe's leading directors. He had been born in Paris, his father a Russian Jew, his mother Polish of Russian stock. When Roman was 3, the family moved to Krakow. They were still there in the 1940s when the Germans arrived and sealed off the ghetto. With his father's help, Roman managed to escape and live with family friends until the war ended. Both his parents, however, were sent to concentration camps, his mother dying in Auschwitz. Yeah, I heard that too, just recently, sweet Melissa. I didn't know that. Hey, Brittany. I had no idea. This is just, yeah, I don't know. I did not know that about Roman at all. Following the war, he spent 5 years at the Polish National Film Academy at Lodz. As his senior thesis, he wrote and directed Two Men and a Wardrobe. As much acclaimed surrealistic short, he made several other short films, among them Mammals, in which a Polish friend, Wojciech Farowski, played a thief. After an extended trip to Paris, Polanski returned to Poland to make Knife in the Water, his first feature-length effort. It won the Critics' Award at the Venice Film Festival, was nominated for an Academy Award, and established Polanski, then only 27, as one of Europe's most promising filmmakers. In 1965, Polanski made his first film in English, Repulsion, starring Catherine Deneuve. Cul-de-sac followed, which won the Best Film Award in the Berlin Film Festival, the Critics' Award in Venice, a Diploma of Merit in Edinburgh, and the Guive Calpino Award in Rome. In the news stories following the Tate murders, reporters are quick to note that in Repulsion, Miss Deneuve went mad and murdered 2 men, while in Cul-de-sac, the inhabitants of an isolated castle each meets a bizarre fate until only one man is left alive. They also noted Polanski's penchant for violence, without adding that most often in Polanski's films, the violence was less explicit than implied. Roman Polanski's personal life was no less controversial than his films. After his marriage to Polish film star Brenda Lass ended in divorce in 1962, Polanski became known as the Playboy director. A friend would later recall him leafing through his address book saying, "Who shall I gratify tonight?" Another friend observed that Polanski's immense talent was matched by his ego. Non-friends, who were numerous, had stronger things to say. One, referring to the fact that Polanski was just over 5 feet tall, called him the original 5-foot pole you wouldn't want to touch anyone with. Ooh, the original 5-foot pole you wouldn't want to touch anyone with. Whether one was captivated by his gammon-like charm or repelled by his arrogance, he appeared to touch off strong emotions in nearly everyone whom he met. It was not so with Sharon Tate, at least not at first. When Randolph introduced Roman and Sharon at a large party, neither was particularly impressed. Their introduction was not accidental. On learning that Polanski was considering doing a film spoof of horror movies, Randolph had offered to produce it. He wanted Sharon for the female lead. Polanski gave her a screen test and decided she would be acceptable for the part. Polanski wrote, directed and starred in the film, which eventually appeared as The Fearless Vampire Killers, but Randolph did the cutting, much to the displeasure of the Polish director, who disavowed the final print. Though the film was more camp than art, Polanski revealed another phase of his multifaceted talent in his comic portrayal of the bumbling young assistant of a scholarly vampire hunter. Sharon again looked pretty and had less than a dozen lines. A victim of the vampire early in the picture, in the last scene she bites her lover, Polanski, creating still another monster. Before the filming was over, and after that was for Polanski, a very long courtship. Sharon and Roman became off-screen lovers too. When Sebring flew to London, Sharon told him the news. If he took it hard, he was careful not to show it, very quickly settling into the role of family friend. There was indications aside made to a few associates that Sebring hoped that Sharon would eventually tire Roman, or vice versa, the presumption being that when this happened, he intended to be around. Those who claimed that Sebring was still in love with Sharon were guessing. Though Sebring knew hundreds of people, he apparently had few really close friends, and kept his inner feelings very much to himself. But it was a safe guess, and that although the nature that love had changed, some deep attachment remained. After the breakup, Sebring was involved with many women, but, as revealed in the LAPD interview sheets, for the most part, the relationships were more sexual than emotional, the majority one-night stands. Paramount asked Polanski to do the film version of Ira Levin's novel Rosemary's Baby, the film in which Mia Farrow played a young girl who had a child by Satan, was completed in 1967. On January 20th, 1968, to the surprise of many friends to whom Polanski had vowed never again to marry, he and Sharon were wed in Maud ceremony in London. Rosemary's Baby premiered that June. That same month, the Polanskis rented actress Patty Duke's home at 1600 Summit Ridge Drive in Los Angeles. It was while they were living there that Mrs. Chapman began working for them. In early 1969, they heard that 10050 Cielo Drive might be vacant. Though they never met in person, Sharon talked to Terry Melcher on the phone several times, making arrangements to take over his unexpired lease. The Polanskis signed a rental agreement on February 12, 1969, at $1,200 a month and moved in 3 days later. Though Rosemary's Baby was a smash success, Sharon's own career had never quite taken off. She had appeared semi-nude in the March 1967 issue of Playboy. Polanski himself took the photos on the set of The Fearless Vampire Killers. The accompanying article began, "This is the year that Sharon Tate happens, but the prediction wasn't fulfilled, not that year. Though a number of reviewers commented on her striking looks, neither this nor two other films in which she played, Don't Make Waves with Tony Curtis and The Wrecking Crew with Dean Martin, brought her much closer to stardom. Her biggest role came in 1967 film Valley of the Dolls, in which she played the actress Jennifer who, on learning that she had breast cancer, takes an overdose of sleeping pills. Not long after her death, Jennifer remarks, 'I have no talent. All I have is a body.'" There were reviewers who felt that adequately summed up Sharon Tate's performance. To be fair, to date, she hadn't been given a single role which gave her a chance to bring out whatever acting ability she may have had. She was not a star, not yet. Her career seemed to hesitate on the edge of breakthrough, but it could easily have remained stationary or gone the other way. But for the first time in her life, Sharon's ambition had slipped to second place. Her marriage and her pregnancy had become her whole life, according to those closest to her. She seemed oblivious to all else. There were rumors of trouble in her marriage. Several of her female friends told LAPD that she had waited to tell Roman of her pregnancy until after it was too late to abort. If she was concerned that even after marriage, Polanski remained a playboy, she hid it. Sharon herself often told a story, then current in the movie Colony, of how Rowan was driving through Beverly Hills when spotting a pretty girl walking ahead of him. He yelled, "Miss, you have a beautiful arse." Only when the girl turned did he recognize his wife, yet it was obvious that she hoped the baby would bring the marriage closer together. Hollywood is a bitchy town. In interviewing acquaintances of the victims, LAPD would encounter an incredible amount of venom. Interestingly enough, in the dozens of interview sheets, no one who actually knew Sharon Tate said anything bad about her. Very sweet, somewhat naive. These were the words most often used. That Sunday, a Los Angeles Times reporter who had known Sharon described her as an astonishingly beautiful woman with a statuesque figure and a face of great delicacy. But then he didn't see her as Coroner Noguchi did. Cause of death, multiple stab wounds of the chest and back, penetrating the heart, lungs, and liver, causing massive hemorrhage. Victim was stabbed 16 times, 5 of which wounds were in and of themselves fatal. Jay Sebring, 9860 Easton Drive, Benedict Canyon, Los Angeles. Male Caucasian, 35 years, 5'6", 120 pounds, black hair, brown eyes. Victim was a hairstylist and had a corporation known as Sebring International. Born Thomas J. Kummer in Detroit, Michigan, he had changed his name to Jay Sebring shortly after arriving in Hollywood, following a 4-year stint as a Navy barber, borrowing the last name from the famous Florida sports car race because he liked the image it projected. In his professional life, as in his work appearances, were all important. He drove an expensive sports car, frequented the inn clubs, even had his Levi jackets custom made. He employed a full-time butler, gave lavish parties, and lived in a jinxed mansion, 9860 Easton Drive, Benedict Canyon. Once the love nest of actress Jean Harlow and producer Paul Byrne, it was here, in Harlow's bedroom, that Byrne had committed suicide 2 months after their marriage. According to acquaintances, Sebring had bought the house because of its far-out reputation. It was widely reported that a motion picture studio had flown Sebring to London just to cut George Pepper's hair at a cost of $25,000. Holy shit. While the report was probably as factual as another also current that he had a black belt in karate, he had taken a few lessons from Bruce Lee. There was no question that he was leading men's hairstylists in the United States, and that more than any other single individual, he was responsible for the revolution in male hair care. In addition to Pepper, his customers included Frank Sinatra, Paul Newman, Steve McQueen, Peter Lawford, and numerous other motion picture stars, many of whom have promised to invest in his new corporation, Sebring International. While keeping his original salon at 725 North Fairfax in Los Angeles, he planned to open a series of franchise shops and to market a line of men's toiletries bearing his name. The first shop had been opened in San Francisco, May 1969. Sorry, I'm just reading the chat. Abigail Folger and Colonel and Mrs. Paul Tate being among those at the grand opening. On April 9th, 1968, Sebring had signed an application for over $500,000 executive production policy with the Occidental Life Insurance Company of California. A background investigation conducted by the retail credit company estimated his net worth at $100,000, of which $80,000 was the appraised worth of his residence. Sebring Inc., the original business, had assets of $150,000 with liabilities of $115,000. The investigators also looked into Sebring's personal life. He had married once in October 1960. He and his wife, Cammie, a model, separating in August 1963. Their divorce became final in March 1965. The couple had no children. The report also stated that Sebring had never used drugs as a habit. LAPD knew otherwise. They also knew something else the credit company investigators had never discovered. There was a darker side to Jay Sebring's nature that surfaced during numerous interviews conducted by the police. As noted in the official report, he was considered a ladies' man and took numerous women to his residence in the Hollywood Hills. He would tie the women up with a small sash cord and, if they agreed, would whip them, after which they would have sexual relations. Rumors of this had long circulated around Hollywood. Now picked up by the press, they became the basis for numerous theories, chief among them that some sort of a sadomasochistic orgy had been in progress on the night of August 9th, 1969 at 100 Cielo Drive. LAPD never seriously considered Sebring's odd sexual habits as a possible cause for the murders. None of the girls interviewed, and the number was large. Sebring frequently dated 5 or 6 different girls a week, claimed that Sebring had actually hurt them, though he often asked them to pretend pain. Nor, as far as could be determined, was Sebring involved in a group sex. He was too afraid his private quirks would subject him to ridicule. The mundane truth appeared to be that, behind the carefully cultivated public image, there was a lonely, troubled man so insecure in his role that even in his sex life, he had to revert to fantasy. Cause of death, I can't even say it. Extenuation. Something like that. Victim literally bled to death. Victim had been stabbed 7 times and shot once. At least 3 of the stab wounds, as well as a gunshot wound, being in of itself fatal. Abigail Ann Folger, female Caucasian, 25 years, 5'5", 120 pounds, brown hair, hazel eyes, resident since the 1st of April, 10050 Cielo Drive. Prior to that, she lived at 2774 Woodstock Road, occupation heiress to the Folger coffee fortune. Abigail Gibby Folger's coming out party had been held at the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco on December 21st, 1961. The Italian ball was one of the highlights of the social season. The debutante, wearing a bright yellow dwyer she had purchased at Paris the previous summer. After that, she had attended Radcliffe, graduating with honors, worked for a time as publicity director for the University of California Art Museum in Berkeley, quit that to work at a New York bookstore, then became involved in social work in the ghettos. It was while in New York in early 1968 that Polish novelist Jerzy Kowinski introduced her to Wojtek Farowski. They left New York together that August, driving to Los Angeles. They were rented a house at 2774 Woodstock Road off Mulholland in Hollywood Hills. Though Frykowski, she met the Polanskis, Sebring, others in the circle. She was one of the investors in Sebring International. Shortly after arriving in Southern California, she registered as a volunteer social worker for the Los Angeles County Welfare Department and would get up at dawn each day for assignments that took her into Watts, Passacola, and other ghetto areas. She continued this work until the day before she and Frykowski moved into 10050 Cielo Drive. Something changed after that. Probably it was a combination of things. She became depressed over how little such work actually accomplished, how big the problems stayed. A lot of social workers go home at night, take a bath, and wash off their day, she told an old San Francisco friend. I can't. The suffering gets under your skin. In May, Black City Councilman Thomas Bradley ran against incumbent Samuel Doherty for mayor of Los Angeles. Bradley's defeat, after a campaign heavy with racial smears, left her disillusioned and bitter. She did not resume her social work. She was also disturbed about the way her affair with Frykowski was going, and with their use of drugs, which had passed the point of experimentation. She talked about all these things with her psychiatrist, Dr. Marvin Flicker. She saw him 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at 4:30 p.m. She had kept her appointment that Friday. Flicker told the police that he thought Abigail was almost ready to leave Frykowski, that she was attempting to build up enough nerve to go it alone. The police were unable to determine exactly when Folger and Frykowski began to use drugs heavily on a regular basis. It was learned that on their cross-country trip, they had stopped in Irving, Texas, staying several days with a big dope dealer, well known to local and Dallas police. Dealers were among their regular guests, both at Woodstock House and after they moved to Cielo Drive. William Tennant told police that whenever he visited the Leiter residence, Abigail always seemed to be in a stupor from narcotics. When her mother last talked to her about 10 that Friday night, she said Gibby had sounded lucid but a little high. Mrs. Folger, who was not unaware of her daughter's problems, had contributed large amounts of both money and time to the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic to help in their pioneer work in treating drug abuse. The coroners discovered 2.4 milligrams of MDA in Abigail Folger's system. That this was a larger amount than was found in Wojtek's body, 0.6 milligrams, did not necessarily indicate that she had taken a larger quantity of drug, but could mean she had taken it at a later time. Effects of the drug vary, depending on the individual and dosage, but one thing was clear. That night she was fully aware of what was happening. Victim had been stabbed 28 times. Wojtek, male, Caucasian, 32 years old, 5'10", 165 pounds, blonde hair, blue eyes. Wojtek had been living with Abigail Folger in a common law relationship. Wojtek Roman Polanski would later tell reporters was a man of little talent but immense charm. The two had been friends in Poland, Frykowski's father reputedly having helped finance one of Polanski's earlier films. Even in Poland, Frykowski had been known as a playboy. According to fellow people he had once taken on and rendered inoperative, two members of the secret police, which may have had something to do with his exit from Poland in 1967. He had married twice and had one son, who had remained behind when he moved to Paris, both there and later in New York. Polanski had given him money to encouragement, hopeful, but knowing Wojtek well, not too optimistic that one of his grand plans would come through. None ever quite did. He told people that he was a writer, but no one could recall having read anything he had written. Friends of Abigail Folger told the police that Frykowski had introduced her to drugs so as to keep her under his control. Friends of Wojtek said the opposite, that Folger had provided the drugs as not to lose him. According to the police report, he had no means of support and lived off Folger's fortune. He used cocaine, mescaline, LSD, marijuana, hashish in large amounts. He was an extrovert and gave invitations to almost everyone he met to come visit him at his residence. Narcotic parties were the order of the day. He had fought hard for his life. Victim was shot twice, struck over the head 13 times with a blunt object, and stabbed 51 times. Holy. Stephen Earl Parent, male Caucasian, 18 years, 6'0", 175 pounds, red hair, brown eyes. He had graduated from a rural high school in June, dated several girls, but no one in particular, had a full-time job as a delivery boy for a plumbing company. plus a part-time job evenings as a salesman for a stereo shop, holding down 2 jobs so he could save money to attend junior college that summer. Victim had 1 defensive slash wound and had been shot 4 times. During the fluoroscopy examination that preceded the Sebring autopsy, Dr. Noguchi discovered a bullet lodged between Sebring's back and his shirt. 3 more bullets were found during the autopsies, 1 in Frykowski's body, 2 in Parent's. These, plus the slug and fragments found in Parent's automobile, were turned over to Sergeant William Lee, Firearms and Explosive Unit, SID, for study. Lee concluded that all the bullets had probably been fired from the same gun and that they were a .22 caliber. While the autopsies were in progress, Sergeants Paul Whiteley and Charles Gwinther, 2 homicide detectives from the Los Angeles Sheriff's Office, approached Sergeant Jess Buckles, one of the Los Angeles Police Department detectives assigned to the Tate homicides, and told him something very curious. The curious thing, as in the Tate's homicide, a message had been left at the scene. On the wall in the living room, not far from Hinman's body, were the words "political piggy," printed in the victim's own blood. Whitley also told Buckles that they had arrested a suspect in connection with the murder, one Robert Bobby Bugliosi, a young hippie musician. He had been driving a car that belonged to Hinman. There was blood on his shirt and trousers, and a knife had been found hidden in the tire well of the vehicle. The arrest had occurred on August 6th, therefore he had been in custody at the time of the Tate homicides. However, it was possible that he hadn't been the only one involved in the Hinman murder. Bugliosi had been living at Spahn's Ranch, an old movie ranch near the Los Angeles suburb of Chatsworth, with a bunch of other hippies. It was an odd group, their leader, a guy named Charlie, apparently having convinced them that he was Jesus Christ. Buckles Whiteley would later recall, lost interest when he mentioned hippies. Nah, he replied, we know what's been behind those murders. They're part of a big dope transaction. Whiteley again emphasized the odd similarities, like mode of death. In both cases, a message had been left, both printed, both in a victim's blood. And in both the letters, pig appeared. Any one of these things would be highly unusual, but all the odds against it being a coincidence must be astronomical. Sergeant Buckles, LAPD, told Sergeants Whiteley and Gunther, LASO, if you don't hear from us in a week or so, that means we're on to something else. A little more than 24 hours after the discovery of the Tate victims, the Los Angeles Police Department was given a lead by the Los Angeles Sheriff's Office, which, if followed, could possibly have broken the case. Buckles never did call, nor did he think the information important enough to walk across the autopsy room and mention the conversation to his superior, Lieutenant Robert Helder, who was in charge of the Tate investigation. At Lieutenant Helder's suggestion, Noguchi withheld specifics when he met with the press. He did not mention the number of wounds, nor did he say anything about 2 of the victims having ingested drugs. He did, again, deny that already much repeated reports that there had been sexual molestation and or mutilation. Neither was true, he stressed. Asked about Sharon's child, he said that Mrs. Polanski was in 8 months of her pregnancy, that the child was a perfectly formed boy, and that he had been removed by post-mortem cesarean within the first 20 minutes after the mother's death. His life probably could have been saved, but by the time the bodies were discovered, it was too late. Lieutenant Helder also talked to the press that day. Yes, Garrison was still in custody. No, he could not comment on the evidence against him, except to say that the police were now investigating the acquaintances. Pressed further, Helder admitted, there's no solid information that will limit us to a single suspect. I could have been 1 man. It could have been 2. It could have been 3. But, he added, I don't feel that we have a maniac running around. I didn't know they cut out the baby. I just thought that was just talk. Oh my God.
They didn't cut out the baby. They were saying that if the baby was cut out, it would have
okay.
survived.
Thank you. Because I didn't think it was.
Sharon actually asked them to cut out the baby after when she was being stabbed to save the baby.
Oh, that was horrible. I'm glad they didn't because I didn't think so, but now I get why they said that. Okay. Lieutenant A.H. Burdick began the polygraph examination of William Garrison at 4:25 that afternoon at Parker Center. Burdick did not immediately hook up Garrison. In accordance with routine, the initial portion of the examination was conversational, the examiner attempting to put the suspects at ease while eliciting as much background information as possible. Though obviously frightened, Garrison loosened up a little as he talked. He told Burdick that he was 19, from Ohio, and had been hired by Rudy Altobelli in March, just before Altobelli left for Europe. His job was simple, to look after the guest house at Altobelli's 3 dogs. In return, he had been given a place to stay, $35 a week, and the promise of an airline ticket back to Ohio when Altobelli returned. He had little to do so with the people who lived in the main house, Garrison claimed. Several of his replies seemed to bear this out. He still referred to Frykowski, for example, as the younger Polanski, while he appeared unfamiliar with Sebring, either by name or description, though he had seen the black Porsche in the driveway on several occasions. Asked to relate his activities prior to the murders, Garrison said that on Thursday night, as an acquaintance had dropped by, accompanied by his girl. They had brought along a 6-pack of beer and some pot. Garrison was sure it was Thursday night, as the man was married, and he brought her up there several other times, on Thursday when his wife lets him go out. Question: did they use your pad? Answers: yes, they did, and I drank some beer while they made out. Garrison recalled that he drank 4 beers, smoked 2 joints, took 1 dexedrine, and was sick all day Friday. About 8:30 or 9 p.m. Friday, Garrison said he went down to the Sunset Strip to buy a pack of cigarettes and a TV dinner. He guessed the time of his return was about 10, but he couldn't be sure, not having a watch. As he passed the main house, he noticed the lights were on, but he didn't see anyone, nor did he observe anything out of the ordinary. Then about 11:15, or something like that, Steve, parent, came up and, he brought his radio with him. He had a clock radio, and I didn't expect him or anything, and he asked me how I'd been and everything. Parent plugged in the radio to demonstrate how it worked, but Garrison wasn't interested. Then I gave him a beer, and he drank it, and then he called somebody on Santa Monica and Dooney. I don't know how to say that word. And he said that he would be going there, and then so he left, and that's the last time I saw him. When found in parent's car, the clock radio had stopped at 12:15 a.m. Remarkable coincidence on logical presumption was that parent had set it while just demonstrating it to Garrison, then unplugged it just before he left. This would coincide with Garrison's estimation of time. According to Garrison, after parent left, he wrote some letters and played the stereo, not going to sleep until just before dawn. Though he claimed to have heard nothing unusual during the night, he admitted that he had been scared. Why? Burdick asked. Well, Garrison replied, not long after Steve left, he noticed that the handle of the door was turned down, as if someone had tried to open it. And when he tried to use the phone to learn that time, it was found dead. Like the other officers, Burdick found it difficult to believe that Garrison, though admittedly awake all night, heard nothing, while neighbors even farther away heard shots and or screams. Garrison insisted, however, that he had neither heard nor seen anything. He was less sure on another point, whether he had gone out in the backyard when he let Altobelli's dogs out. To Burdick, that he appeared evasive about this. From the yard, however, he couldn't see the main house, though he might have heard something. As far as LAPD was concerned, the moment of truth was now arriving. Burdick began setting up the polygraph at the same time reading Garrison the list of questions he intended to ask. This, too, was standard operating procedure and more than a little psychological. Knowing a certain question was going to be asked, but not when, built tension, insinuating the response. He then began the test. Question: is your true last name Garrison? Yes. No significant response. Concerning Steve, did you cause his death? No. Facing forward, Garrison couldn't see Burdick's face. Burdick kept his voice matter-of-fact as he moved on to the next question, in no way indicating that the steel pens had jerked across the graph. You understand the questions? Yes. Do you feel responsible for Steve's death? That he even knew me? Yes. Huh? That he even knew me. I mean, he wouldn't have come up that night and nothing would have happened, in other Woodstone. Burdick relieved the pressure cup on Garrison's arm and told him to relax, talk to him informally for a while. Then again, the pressure and the questions only slightly changed this time. Is your true last name Garrison? Yes. Did you shoot Steve? No. There's no significant response again. More test questions. Do you know who caused Mrs. Polanski's death? No. Did you cause Mrs. Polanski's death? No. Burdick now accepted Garrison's explanation that he felt responsibility for parents' death, but had no part in causing it or the other murders. The examination went on for another half hour or so, during which Burdick closed off several avenues of investigation. Garrison was not gay. He had never had sex with any of the victims. He had never sold drugs. There was no indication that Garrison was lying, but he remained nervous throughout. Burdick asked him why. Garrison explained that when he was being taken to his cell, a policeman had pointed at him, saying There's the guy that killed all those people. Question. I would imagine it would shake you up, but that doesn't mean you're lying. No, I'm just confused. Where are you confused? For one thing, how come I wasn't murdered? I don't know. Although legally inadmissible as evidence, the police believe in the polygraph. In 1972, a Los Angeles Superior Court judge broke the precedent and permitted the results of a polygraph test to be received into evidence in a marijuana case. Though uninformed of it at the time, Garrison had passed. At the conclusion of the examination, Captain Don Martin, commanded SID, wrote in the official report. It was the examiner's opinion that Mr. Garrison was truthful and not criminally involved in the Polanski homicides. Unofficially, though, verdict believed Garrison clean on participation. He felt he was a little muddy on the knowledge. It was possible that he had heard something, then fearful, hidden until dawn. This was just conjecture, however. For all intents and purposes, with the polygraph, William Edson Garrison ceased to be a good suspect, yet that bothersome question remained. Every single human being at 10050 Cielo Drive had been slaughtered, save one. Why? Because there was no immediate answer, and certainly in part because, having been the only warm body on the premises, he had seemed such a likely suspect, Garrison was held for another day. That same Sunday, Gerald D. Friedman, a UCLA student, contacted the police and informed them that the call Stephen Parent made at approximately 11:45 on Friday night had been to him. Parent was going to build a stereo set for Friedman, and he wanted to talk over the details. Friedman had tried to beg off, saying it was late, but finally gave in and told Parent he could drop by for a few minutes. Parent had asked him the time, and when he told him, he said he would be there by 12:30. According to Friedman, he never got there. It was possible when Parent asked the time, he also set the radio clock. That Sunday, LAPD not only lost their best suspect to date, another promising lead fizzled out. Sharon Tate red Ferrari, which the police had thought might have been used as getaway car, was located in Beverly Hills garage where Sharon had taken it the previous week for repairs. That evening, Roman Polanski returned from London. Reporters who saw him at the airport described him as terribly crushed and beaten by the tragedy. Though he refused to talk with the press, a spokesman for him denied there was any truth to the rumors of a marital rift. Polanski had remained in London, he said, because he hadn't finished his work there. Sharon had returned home early by boat because of airline restrictions against travel during the last 2 months of pregnancy. Polanski was taken to an apartment inside the Paramount lot, where he remained in seclusion under a doctor's care. The police talked to him briefly that night, but he was, at the time, unable to suggest anyone with a motive for murders. This is a little bit more, and then I'll stop. Frank Struthers also returned to Los Angeles that Sunday night. About 8:30 p.m., the staffies dropped him off at the end of the long driveway leading to the La Bianca residence. Lugging his suitcase and camping equipment up the driveway, the 15-year-old noticed that the speedboat was still on the trailers behind Leno's Thunderbird. That seemed odd. His stepfather didn't like to leave the boat out overnight. Stowing his equipment in the garage, he went to the back door of the residence. Only then did he notice that all the window shades had been pulled down. He couldn't recall ever seeing them that way before. It frightened him just a little bit. The light on in the kitchen as he knocked on the door. There was no response. He called out. Again, no answer. Really upset now, he walked to the closet, closest payphone, which was at a hamburger stand at Hyperion and Rowena. He dialed the number of the house, then getting no response, tried to reach his sister at the restaurant where she worked. Suzanne wasn't working that night, but the manager offered to try her apartment. Frank gave him the number of the payphone. Shortly after 9, she called. She hadn't seen or heard from their mother and stepfather since they had dropped her off at her apartment the previous night. Telling Frank to remain where he was, she called her boyfriend, Joe Dorgan, and told him Frank thought something was wrong in the house. About 9:30, Joe and Suzanne picked up Frank at the hamburger stand, the three driving directly to 3301 Waverly Drive. Rosemary often left a set of house keys in her own car. They found them and opened the back door. Since no one tried the door before using the key, it is unknown whether it was locked. Dorgan suggested that Susan remain in the kitchen while he and Frank checked out the rest of the house. They proceeded through the dining room. When they got to the living room, they saw Lino. He was sprawled on his back between the couch and a chair. There was a throw pillow over his head, some kind of cord around his neck, and the tops of his pajamas were torn open, so his stomach was bare. Something was protruding from his stomach. He was so still, they knew he was dead. Afraid Susan would follow and see what they had, they returned to the kitchen. Joe picked up the phone to call the police. Then, worried that he might be disturbing evidence, put it back down, telling Suzanne, everything's okay, let's get out of here. But Suzanne knew everything wasn't okay. On the refrigerator door, someone had written something in what looked like red paint. Hurrying back down the driveway, they stopped at a duplex across the street, and Dorgan rang the bell at 3308 Waverly Drive. The people opened. Dorgan said that there had been a stabbing, and he wanted to call the police. The person inside refused to open the door, saying, well, I'll call the police for you. LAPD switchboard logged the call at 10:26 p.m., the caller complaining about some juveniles making a disturbance. Unsure whether the person had really made the call, Dorgan had already pushed the bell above the other apartment, 3306. Dr. and Mrs. Mary J. Brigham let the three young people in. However, they were so upset, Mrs. Brigham had to complete the call. At 10:35, Unit 6A39, a black and white manned officers, W.C. Rodriguez and J.C. Tony, was dispatched to this address, arriving very quickly. 5 to 7 minutes later, while Suzanne and Frank remained with the doctor and his wife, Dorgan accompanied the two Hollywood Division officers to the La Bianca residence. Tony covered the back door while Rodriguez went around the house. The front door was closed but not locked. After one look inside, he ran back to the car and called for a backup unit, a supervisor, and an ambulance. Rodriguez had been on the force only 14 months. He had never discovered a body before. Within a few minutes, ambulance unit GI arrived, and Lino LaBianca was pronounced DOA, dead on arrival. In addition to the pillow Frank and Joe had seen, there was a bloody pillowcase over his head. The cord around his neck was attached to a massive lamp. The cord knotted so tightly it appeared he had been throttled with it. His hands were tied behind his back with a leather thong. The object protruding from his stomach was an ivory-handled bi-tinned carving fork. In addition to a number of stab wounds in the abdomen, someone had carved the letters "bore" in his naked flesh. The backup unit 6L40, manned by Sergeant Edward L. Klein, arrived just after the ambulance. A veteran of 16 years, Klein took charge, obtaining a pink DOA slip from the two attendants before they left. The pair were already on their way down the driveway when Rodriguez called them back. Klein had found another body in the master bedroom. Rosemary LaBianca was lying face down on the bedroom floor, parallel to the bed and dresser, in a large pool of blood. She was wearing a short pink nightgown and, over it, an expensive dress, blue with white horizontal stripes, which Suzanne would later identify as one of her mother's favorites. Both nightgown and dress were bunched up over the head, so her back, buttocks, and legs were bare. Klein didn't even try to count the stab wounds, there were so many. Her hands were not tied, but like Lino, she had a pillowcase over her head and a lamp cord was wrapped around her neck. The cord was attached to one of the pair of bedroom lamps, both of which had overturned. The tautness of the cord, plus the second pool of blood over 2 feet from the body, indicated that perhaps she had tried to crawl, pulling the lamps over while doing so. A second pink DOA slip was filled out for Mrs. Rosemary LaBianca. Joe Dorgan had to tell Suzanne and Frank. There was writing in what appeared to be blood in 3 places in the residence. High up on the north wall in the living room, above several other paintings, were printed the words, "Death to Pigs." On the south wall, to the left of the front door, even higher up, was the single word, "Rise." There were 2 words on the refrigerator in the kitchen, the first of which was misspelled. They read, Helter Skelter. Oh, okay. I'm not going to read anymore just because I don't want to kill my throat. But the next chapter we will do again next Thursday. Actually, do you want me to keep going for a little bit? This one's not too long, actually. I can read it. You guys put yes or no in the comments. There's just a couple minutes more of its smaller chapter. And while you do that, I need to go to the phone booth. Okay, I'm back. I lulled you. Like, what happened? You fell asleep on me? Oh my God, you're one of those people who eat peanut butter by the spoon. Oh, and honey. There's this next chapter is actually not quite as big. I can probably read that and then we'll start off next week. Oh yeah, let me see. Or wait, unless I do that one next week. You have PB all over you. All right, I'll read this small part here, and then that's it. You guys can ask questions or whatever. Okay, at 12:15 a.m., the case was assigned to robbery homicide sergeant Danny Galindo. I can never pronounce these guys like last names. Who had spent the previous night on guard duty at the Tate residence, was the first detective to arrive at about 1 a.m. He was joined shortly after by Inspector K.J. McCauley and several other detectives, while an additional unit, ordered by Klein, sealed off the grounds. As the Tate homicides, however, the reporter who had already begun to arrive apparently had little difficulty obtaining inside information. Galindo made a detailed search of the one-story residence. Except for the overturned lamps, there were no signs of a struggle, nor was there any evidence that robbery had been the motive. Among the items that Galindo would log into the county the county public administrator's report were a man's gold ring, the main stone, a 1-carat diamond, the other stones also diamonds, only slightly smaller, 2 women's rings, both expensive, both in plain view on a dresser in the bedroom, necklaces, bracelets, camera equipment, handguns, shotguns, rifles, a coin collection, a bag of uncirculated nickels found in the trunk of Leno's Thunderbird, worth considerably more than $400 in face value. Leno LaBianca's wallet with credit cards and cash in the glove compartment of his car, several watches, one is a high-priced stopwatch of the type used to clock racehorses, plus numerous other easily fenced items. Several days later, Frank Struthers returned to the residence with the police. The only thing missing, as far as he determined, were Rosemary's wallet and a wristwatch. Galindo was unable to find any indications of forced entry. However, testing the back door, he found it could be jimmied very easily. He was able to open it with only a strip of celluloid. Detectives made a number of other discoveries. The ivory-handled carving fork found protruding from Leno's stomach belonged to a set found in a kitchen drawer. There were some watermelon rinds on the sink. There were also blood splatters, both there and in the rear bathroom, and a piece of blood-soaked paper was found on the floor in the dining room. It's frayed and suggesting that possibly it had been the instrument used to print the words. In many ways, activities at 3301 Waverly Drive the rest of that night were a replay of those that had occurred at 150 Cielo Drive less than 48 hours earlier. Even to, in some cases, the same cast, with Sergeant Joe Renato arriving about 3 a.m. to take blood samples. The sample from the kitchen sink wasn't sufficient to determine if it was animal or human, but all the other samples tested positive on the test, indicating that they were human blood. The blood in the rear bathroom, as well as all the blood in the vicinity of Rosemary LaBianca's body, was type A, Rosemary LaBianca's type. All the other samples, including that taken from the rumpled paper and the various writings, were type B, Leno LaBianca's type. This time, Granado didn't take any subtypes. The fingerprint men from SID, Sergeants Harold Dolan and Jay Claiborne, lifted a total of 25 latents, all but 6 of which later would be identified as belonging to Leno, Rosemary, or Frank. It was apparent to Dolan from examining those areas that where fingerprints should have been but weren't, that an effort had been made to eradicate prints. For example, there was not even a smudge on the ivory handle of the carving fork, on the chrome handle of the refrigerator door, or on the enamel finish of the door itself, all surfaces that readily lent themselves to receiving latent fingerprints. The refrigerator door, on close examination, showed white marks. After the police photographer had finished, a deputy coroner supervised the removal of the bodies. The pillowcases were left in place over the heads of the victims. The lamp cords were cut near the bases, so the knots remained intact for study. A representative of the Animal Regulation Department removed the 3 dogs, which, when the first officer had arrived, had been found inside the house. Left behind were the puzzle pieces, but this time, at least, a partial pattern was discernible. In the similarities, Los Angeles, California, consecutive nights, multiple murders, victims affluent Caucasians, multiple stab wounds, incredible savagery, absence of a conventional motive, no evidence of ransacking or robbery, ropes around the neck of 2 Tate victims, cords around the necks of both LaBiancas, and the bloody printing. Yet within 24 hours, the police would decide there was no connection between the 2 sets of murders. Second ritual killings here. Las Feliz couple slaying linked to 5-way murder scene. The headline screened from the front pages that Monday morning. TV programs were interrupted for updates to the millions of Los Angeles who commuted to work via the freeways. Their car radios seemed to broadcast little else. Some of the details were garbled. It was reported, for example, that the pillowcases were white hoods, that the phrase "death to pigs" had been printed in blood on the refrigerator door when it actually appeared on the wall in the living room. But enough information had leaked out for the detectives, again, to have trouble finding polygraph keys. It was then the fear began. When the news of the Tate homicides broke, even those acquainted with the victims were less fearful than shocked, for simultaneously came the announcement that a suspect had been arrested and charged with the murders. Gerritsen, however, had been in custody when these new murders took place, and with the release that Monday, still looking as puzzled and frightened as when the police captured him, the panic began and spread. If Gerritsen wasn't guilty, then it meant that whoever was still at large. If it could happen in places as widely separated as Los Angeles and Bel Air, to people as disparate as movie colony celebrities and a grocery market owner and his wife, it meant it could happen anywhere, to anyone. Sometimes fear can be measured along the barometers. In 2 days, one Beverly Hills sporting goods store sold 200 firearms. Prior to the murders, they averaged 3 or 4 a day. Some of the private security forces doubled, then tripled their personnel. Guard dogs, once priced at $200, now sold for $1,500. Those who supplied them soon ran out. Locksmiths quoted 2-week delays on orders. Accidental shootings, suspicions, persons reports all suddenly increased. The news that there had been 28 murders in Los Angeles that weekend, the average being 1 a day, did nothing to decrease apprehension. It was reported that Frank Sinatra was in hiding, that Mia Farrow wouldn't attend her friend Sharon's funeral because a relative explained Mia is afraid and she will be next. That Tony Bennett had moved from his bungalow on the grounds of the Beverly Hills Hotel to an inside suite for greater security. That Steve McQueen now kept a weapon under the front seat of his sports car, that Jerry Lewis had installed an alarm system in his home complete with closed-circuit TV. Connie Stevens later admitted that she had turned her Beverly Hills home into a fortress, mainly because of the Sharon Tate murders. That scared the daylights out of everyone. Friendships ended, romances broke up, people were abruptly dropped from guest lists, parties canceled with the fear of suspicion. The killer or killers could be among anyone. A cloud of fright hung over the Southern California, more dense than its smog. It would not dissipate for months. As late as the following March, William Cloman would write in Esquire, in the great houses of Bel Air, terror sends people flying to their telephones when a branch falls from a tree outside. In each case written in blood of one of the victims, Sergeant Buckles still didn't think it important enough to check further. Deputy Medical Examiner David conducted the LaBianca autopsies. Before starting, he removed the pillowcases from the heads of the victims. Only then was it discovered that, in addition to the carving fork embedded in his abdomen, a knife had been stuck in Lena LaBianca's throat. Since none of the personnel at the scene had observed the knife, this became one of LaBianca's polygraph tees. There were 2 others. For some reason, though the phrase "death to pigs" had leaked to the press, neither Rise nor Helter Skelter had. It's supposed to be Helter, but he spelled it Helter. Leno A. LaBianca, 3301, Waverly Drive, male, Caucasian, 44 years, 6'0", 220 pounds, and brown eyes, brown hair. Born in Los Angeles, son of the founder of the state wholesale grocery company, Leo had gone into the family business after attending the University of Southern California, eventually becoming president of Gateway Markets in a Southern California chain. As far as the police were able to determine, Leno had no enemies, yet they soon discovered that he too had a secret side. Friends and relatives described him as quiet and conservative. They were amazed to learn after his death that he owned 9 thoroughbred racehorses, the most prominent being Kildare Lady, and that he was a chronic gambler, frequenting the tracks nearly every racing day, often betting 500 at a time. Nor did they know that he was, at the time of his death, some $230,000 in debt. In the weeks ahead, the LaBianca detectives would do a remarkable job of tracking their way through the tangled maze of Leno LaBianca's complex financial affairs. The possibility that Leno might have been the victim of loan sharks, however, fell apart when it was learned that Rosemary LaBianca was quite wealthy herself, having more than sufficient assets to pay off Leno's debts. One of Leno's former partners, also Italian, who knew of his gambling habits, told the police he thought the murders might have been committed by the mafia. He admitted he had no evidence to support this. However, the detectives did learn that for a short time, Leno had been on the board of directors of a Hollywood bank which LAPD and LASO intelligence units believed was backed by hoodlum money. They had been unable to prove this, though several other board members were indicted and convicted of a kidding scheme. The possibility of a mafia link became one of a number of leads that would have to be checked out. Leno did not have a criminal record. Rosemary had 1 traffic citation, which dated back to 1957. Leno left $100,000 in insurance, which, since it was to be divided equally among Suzanne, Frank, and the 3 children from his previous marriage, appeared to rule that out as a motive. Leno LaBianca died in the same house in which he had been born. He and Rosemary moving into the family home, which Leno had purchased from his mother in November 1968. Cause of death, multiple stab wounds. Victim had 12 stab wounds plus 14 puncture wounds made by a double tin fork, for a total of 26 separate wounds, any one of 6 of which could in and of itself have been fatal. Rosemary LaBianca, 3301 Waverly Drive. Female Caucasian, 38 years, 5'5", 125 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes. It was probable that even Rosemary did not know a great deal about her early years. It was believed that she had been born in Mexico of American parents, then orphaned or abandoned in Arizona. She remained in an orphanage there until the age of 12, when she was adopted by a family named Harmon, who took her to California. She had met her first husband while working as a car hop at the Brown Derby Drive in Los Angeles in the late 1940s, while still in her teens. They were divorced in 1958, and it was shortly after this, while working as a waitress at Las Feliz Inn, that she met and married Leno LaBianca. Her former husband was polygraphed and cleared of any involvement in the crime. 4 employers, ex-boyfriends, current business associates were interviewed. No one could recall anyone who disliked her. According to Ruth Civic, her partner in boutique carriage, Rosemary had a good head for business. Not only was the shop successful, Rosemary also invested in stocks and commodities and did well. How well was not known until her estate was probated, and it was learned she had left $2,600,000. Abigail Folger, the heiress to the Cielo Slangs, had left less than 1/5 of that. Mrs. Civic had last seen Rosemary on Friday when they went buying for the store. Rosemary had called on Saturday morning, telling her they planned to drive to Lake Isabella and wondering if she could drop by that afternoon and feed the dogs. The LaBiancas had 3 dogs. All had barked loudly when she approached the house at about 6 p.m. After feeding them, taking the dog food out of the refrigerator, Mrs. Civic checked the doors. All were locked and left. Mrs. Civic's testimony established that whoever wiped the refrigerator handle of Prince had done so sometime after she had been there. Rosemary LaBianca car hopped to millionairesses 2 murder victim. Cause of death, multiple stab wounds. Victim had been stabbed a total of 41 times, any one of 6 of which could and of itself have been fatal. All but one of Leno LaBianca's wounds were to the front of his body. 36 of the 41 inflicted on Rosemary LaBianca were to her back and buttocks. Leno had no defensive wounds, indicating that his hands had probably been bound before he was stabbed. Rosemary had a defensive slash wound on her left jaw. This wound, plus the knife in Leno's throat, indicated that the placing of the pillowcases over the heads of the victims was a belated act, possibly even occurring after they had died. The pillowcases were identified as the LaBianca's own, having been removed from the 2 pillows on their bed. The knife found in Lino's throat was also theirs, though it was from a different set than the fork. It matched others found in the kitchen drawer. The dimension of its blade were length 4/7 of inches, thickness just under 1/16 of an inch, width at its widest point was 13/16 inch, widest at narrowest point is 3 to 8 inches. The LaBianca detectives later noted that to the report, the knife recovered from his throat appeared to be the weapon used in both homicides. It was a presumption and nothing more, since for some reason, the doctor, unlike his superior, Dr. Noguchi, who handled the Tate autopsies, did not measure the dimensions of the wounds, nor did the detectives assigned to LaBianca's case ask for these statistics. The ramifications of this one presumption were immense. A single weapon indicated that there was probably a single killer. That the weapon used belonged in the residence meant that the killer had probably arrived unarmed, his decision to kill the pair occurring sometime after he entered the premises. This in turn suggested 1, the killer had arrived to commit a burglary or some other crime, then had been surprised when LaBianca's returned home, or 2, that the victims knew the killer, trusting him enough to let him in at 2 in the morning or thereafter. One little presumption, but it would cause many, many problems later, as would the estimated time of death. Asked by the detectives to determine the time, they came up with 3 p.m. Sunday. When other evidence appeared to contradict this, the detectives went back and asked him to recalculate. He now decided Lino LaBianca had died sometime between 12:30 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. on Sunday, and that Rosemary had died an hour earlier. However, the doctor cautioned that the time could be affected by room temperature and other variables. All this was so indecisive that the detectives simply ignored it. They knew from Frank Struthers that Lino was a creature of habit. Every night he bought the paper, then read it before going to bed, always starting with the sports section. That section had been open on the coffee table with Lino's reading glasses right beside it. From this and other evidence, Lino was wearing pajamas, the bed hadn't yet been slept in, and so forth. They concluded that the murders had probably taken place within an hour or so after the LaBiancas had left Foquiano's newsstand, or sometime between 2 and 3 a.m. on Sunday. As early as Monday, police were minimizing the similarities between the 2 crimes. Inspector K.J. McCauley told reporters, "I don't see any connection between the murders and the others. They're too widely removed. I just don't see any connection," Sergeant Royce Houchin observed. "There is a similarity, but whether the same suspect or a copycat, we just don't know." There were several reasons for discounting the similarities. One was the absence of any apparent link between the victims, another the distance between the crimes, still another and more important, in formulating a motive, drugs were found at 150 Cielo Drive while there were none at 3301 Waverly Drive. There was one more reason, perhaps the most influential. Even before Garrettson was released, the Tate detectives had not one but several very promising new suspects. Okay, I'm done until next week. This whole case just seems, I'll keep saying it again, just seems botched from start to finish. Like, how are they not related? I don't understand that. Words were written in blood in both scenes, in both cases, so I don't understand. Anybody have Artsy Nurse? You still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Do you guys have any questions? My throat's gonna kill me, isn't it?
Yeah, it might.
Oh yeah.
I'm over here kind of like sipping on soda and stuff, like sympathetically getting a sore throat, I think, from.
Yeah. Oh, that's already started. Do you think it's ridiculous that they couldn't comprehend that they were related?
Yeah.
Because I mean, it was both scenes had messages written in blood, and then both scenes there was the word pig written, right? Like the LaBiancas and then the Tate. I think they put pig in both.
I don't know if they put pig at the LaBiancas.
I haven't read this book. This is my Artsy Nurse got me into it. So I decided to do it. I've always wanted to read it. I just I don't know why I haven't. I mean, I have all these other books on all these other serial killers and true crime. I can't believe I don't have a Manson book.
I will say the Brittany and Ron's comments throughout,
Yeah.
they're on the ball. I'm reading them like, holy cow, she knows her stuff.
Yeah, I haven't seen all of her comments, but I'm going to go back and look. I've seen her keep commenting. Linda saved that person by knocking on the wrong person's door. Oh, she is on her. Charlie was there with Susan, Tex, Clem, Patricia, Linda, and Leslie. Tex, Leslie, and Patricia murdered the LaBiancas after Charlie tied them up. Charlie left with the other to do another murder. Shit. So did did he commit? He didn't really. He didn't commit any murders, though, right?
Charlie?
Yeah.
Not in these two houses.
No. Okay.
The Manson family suspected of committing up to 35.
Holy shit.
Rosemary that they don't know about. But yeah, they left the LaBiancas to go. I believe it was an actor. I forget the name, but he was friends with Linda Kasabian, and they were gonna kill him too.
Wow.
But she went to the wrong door on purpose, and so after that, they decided to just go back.
Okay, that was in the movie or documentary or whatever it was. It was, yeah, that girl. That's the one that I told you I saw the documentary on, right? Linda?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did see that part in her documentary. She purposely knocked on the wrong door, and that's what saved his life. Yeah, that's what she says, anyways.
I'm looking for the other comment.
It took them months before they realized it was right. That I just don't understand. Even me, as just I'm not even a detective. Even I can put two and two together, or no.
Well, they had
you
they
don't
had different departments working on each one.
It's just, wow. I don't understand how you put your hand on something without gloves. Like, I know it was the 60s, but they had to have been wearing gloves back then, right? Or at least you would think. I don't understand how they could screw this up so much. Like at the Bianca, when they opened the gate, the freaking cop opened the gate without gloves and ruined that print on that gate.
Yeah.
Like that, I did not get. And then like this case with Bianca murders, that one's not as focused on as the Tate murder, like at all. I barely know what happened to the Biancas. There's only a little bit out there in movies. Hopefully this book, well, this is more, I'm learning more about the Biancas in this book than I am anywhere else. Yeah, he never did his own dirty work, eh? It was the 60s. Yeah. You've been watching a YouTube channel? She's doing a timeline leading up to murders. Ah, cool. Anybody got any questions?
I was scanning up for a previous comment, but I'm not seeing it at the moment. But there was one that Brittany and Ron made about that they were familiar with the neighborhood in the Los Feliz next to, it's actually the neighbors of the LaBiancas, where the Manson family had partied at, they had stayed at, and they had even been kicked out of. So even though the victims were, quote unquote, kind of random, both locations were connected to somehow Charlie being told no at some point. And so they were familiar with the neighborhoods, or at the Tate house, Manson had been to that house before.
Well, yeah, because that guy, I don't know his name. I can't remember his name, but what was his name? He used to live there, and that's who Manson was originally looking for.
Melcher. Yeah.
Terry Melcher? Yeah, okay, that was it.
And he knew that he didn't live there anymore. He wasn't after, I do see that comment up there, that he was after Melcher. He had gone there looking for Melcher and had actually seen Sharon Tate. So one of the things that Charlie did say was go to the Melcher's old place. There's movie stars living there now.
Oh my God. So it didn't have anything to do with Terry. Because in that documentary that I watched, that's what Linda had said that happened. He went there pissed off because he wanted this record deal or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, he wanted to be a musician.
Yeah, he was there the night before.
I don't think it was the previous night that he went up there though. I think it was more like a week or two. I don't think it was exactly the night before.
Is it in the beginning? Well, I don't know. I haven't read all this book, but is it true though that at least with the Tate murders and that, was Charlie and his gang already in that house, like in and out of it?
In and out of which house?
The Sharon Tate house, where like was Charlie or his people in that house, like finding ways in and stuff beforehand before they did what they did?
No, they had visited the house when Melcher was there. I think it was just Charlie, maybe Tex, and a couple of the guys. I don't remember exactly who, but it wasn't like a huge group of them.
Okay, so they didn't continuously try and go in the house and make it like, I don't know, like have the girls go in there and just
they did do creepy crawls.
What's that?
They would break into people's houses when they were asleep, and
that.
Yeah.
Okay, so they did
rearrange their furniture.
Did they do that with these guys, like with Bianca?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
I just want to get, because it sucks when you, I don't know. I've got two like different perspectives. I've got the book and I've got these 3 movies and a documentary I watched. So it's the same, but not. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But this book here I'm reading, it's the most factual out of all of them, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's why I trust you and I believe you, and that's why I wanted to read this one. All the other ones are just hogwash, to me, anyways. And the fact that the prosecutor wrote this book, I mean, he's not gonna lie, right?
They stayed with Dennis Wilson. That's one thing that my mom did tell me, was that there was a lot of fun going around in Dennis Wilson's very expensive, I can't remember if it was a Porsche or they would drive around in his really nice vehicle, and they'd go dumpster diving and going through trash to look for food.
I don't know about the women. I know one died. Wasn't it of cancer? I don't know, but Linda Kasabian, she's alive still, right?
Linda Kasabian, yeah, she's alive. She's in jail.
For what?
Or I'm sorry. I'm totally thinking of Patricia Krenwinkel. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay, no. Linda Kasabian got immunity. She didn't serve any time.
Yeah. And one of them died in there, right? And then there's still one in prison?
Patricia Krenwinkel and Leslie Van Houten is not released. I'm going to double check that. She was up for parole multiple times. If any of them did get out, it would be Leslie, because she basically killed the least amount of people. She's still in jail. The governor, California governor, blocked her parole March 30th, 2022.
Oh, so Leslie's still in there?
Yep.
Susan Atkins died from brain cancer.
Yeah.
There was one that died. Okay, so Susan died of brain cancer. This one's still in prison. And Linda's out. And then, what was this one? I thought I saw a documentary where Dennis Wilson and Manson had no talent Manson had no talent as a musician. You'll have to answer that one. The only thing I can say is from what I watched on the movie and TV shows and whatnot, that I think that Dennis was interested at first and then it just didn't go anywhere. Is that true? I don't know.
Well, they worked together for a tiny bit.
Yeah.
Enough to for one of Manson's songs to get on a Beach Boys album. but I think Manson was probably a little too strange for them, which is, I
Yeah.
think, kind of hard to do in the 60s to be that weird. But
Well, yeah. Okay, so that's true then. All right. There's 2 TV shows that are out, and I can't think of them for like for the life of me. The X-File dude is on it. It's not Californication. Hold on, I'm gonna find it. It's bugging me. Squeaky was in prison, but that was for nearly assassinating a president.
yeah, she tried to shoot the president with an unloaded gun.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me that. That's insane.
When we get to who I say my mother is, there's more to say about Squeaky. I'll put that off.
Yeah, yeah. Squeaky was in prison, but that was yeah. I just read that. Too strange. No kidding. I know this whole book I think is going to be strange. Very strange. Okay, where's that? That's it. So the one that David Duchovny's in from the X-Files, the show I watched, and it's on Netflix, and it is called Aquarius, and it has to deal with Charles Manson. It literally, that's what the whole show is about. Actually, you should watch it, the Artsy Nurse. It's really good. It shows about I don't even know who David plays in it, to be honest. But even if you look at the cover, looks just like him. It's called Aquarius.
I might check it out. Sometimes a lot of these like Manson stuff are a little bit hard to watch.
Yeah.
Either because I'm going to be screaming at the TV or
That's true, right?
it's not always a headspace I want to stay in for too long.
Yeah, especially if you and you know the truth and stuff, right? Let me see. What was the other one? Hold on, Charles Manson. Shit. It was months before the gun was found. A 9-year-old boy found it in his backyard. Wow.
See, she's on the ball with the. Well, I don't
He
know
is.
me
Like,
or
really.
Ron that's commenting, but they know they're right on. Another thing that I could add to is at the Spawn Ranch, they didn't have calendars, they didn't have watches. So when these murders happened, and my mom was in the back of Spawn's Ranch the next morning, they were watching the news, which was very strange. They didn't watch any news. They were pretty much in their bubble, away from the world, and the news came on about the murders, and someone made a comment of, well, Tex sure knows how to pick them.
Wow.
And my mom just thought, like, what is going on?
Yeah. That's crazy.
They know something I don't.
Yeah, because she wasn't really involved. Well, she wasn't in all that stuff.
Yeah, she had no idea she was sitting right next to the killers.
Jesus. And then I'm assuming when she found that out, she was probably like, holy shit.
Yeah. Definitely. She didn't find out for, I believe, another month or so. It was after they had gone into the Death Valley desert.
Wow.
And so by the time she knew, she was really trapped out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out a way to get out of there.
Oh, I would be too. I'd be so scared. Because those murders were disgusting. Especially, like, the worst one, obviously, was Sharon. I don't know why, though, nobody really talks about the Bianca murders. I haven't seen much. Have you?
Not a whole lot. I mean, they do they combine them and call them, the Tate LaBianca killings now.
Yeah, but it's really not, though. It's always about Sharon Tate.
Well, it was, she was famous. She was the actress, and she was 9 months pregnant, so she got
Yeah, I mean, I know I
multiple
get
things.
that, but I mean, there was another whole house that people died in, the LaBiancas, and I don't even know their story. I know Sharon's completely. I don't happen in that house. I know pretty much every detail, but with the LaBiancas, I don't know. I didn't even know if they were shot, stabbed, both. I didn't know. Like, no movie even shows that I know
Yeah.
of.
The
That
knives. Oh, go ahead.
no, you go ahead. It's fine.
Um, the murder weapons in the LaBiancas, the knives that they're talking about, and the carving fork that was in his stomach.
Yeah.
Those were actually, I can't remember. I want to say it was Christmas or birthday, but it was gifts to them that their children had bought, special made,
Jesus.
that ended up being the murder weapons.
That's crazy. That other series, there's Aquarius and then there's Mindhunter. I watched them both. I thought they were really good. It was back, like, it shows the part where in the one of the shows, I can't remember which one. I think it's Aquarius, where Charles Manson brings his gang all over to Wilson's house and they all party over there. That's how I figured that one out, because they don't really mention that anywhere else, like in the movies or anything.
Scrolling up here.
No, that was the girl that was staying in
That was
the Tate
Abigail.
house.
Yeah.
Yeah, Abigail Folger. See, and that, you know what, Tammy, I used to think that too, because they don't talk about the LaBianca murders very much. So I assumed the same thing as you did years ago, actually.
Yeah, it was Abigail they found her.
Yeah.
She was in the front yard gripping the. Let's see, what's the one on this other?
Wasn't Sebring in the front yard too? Or no?
Further down.
Yeah.
If he would have left within minutes, I mean minutes earlier, he would have lived.
Yeah. Charlie says, goes into details of the LaBianca murder. Chase Crawford and Matt Smith is in it. Okay. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, not necessarily focused on being historical accurate, re the murders, but I found fascinating. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what it is, the true crime. I just like it. I like reading it, like watching it. I can't really tell you why. I don't know. I'm just interested.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was a very interesting movie. I will say
Yeah.
that. It gave me quite a lot of flashbacks to dealing with that. It was just how it ended.
Yeah.
It was very much like a fork in the road of what could have been, should have been. So yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was a very strange movie.
I have to look at for that one.
How does a teenager keep her cool putting all this together so she doesn't end up murdered? Um, that's a very good question. That was pretty much what my mother had to deal with. That was her biggest challenge, being 17 when she joined, 18 when the trials happened.
That's the way they made it seem when they were reporting on the murders. Yeah. Yeah, really. How does a teenager keep her cool? I don't know how she did it. Brad Pitt killing while high on LSD. Then what?
Oh, in the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood movie.
Okay.
Susan Atkins gets like burned alive with like a blowtorch towards the. I mean, it couldn't have happened to a better person, but yeah, that was a strange movie.
Shit. So what is it? A movie on how things should have been instead of what happened? Like another perspective?
I mean, it does have Sharon Tate. It has the Manson family in it. It has that time. But instead of going to the Tate house, they go next door, and then all the killers end up murdered themselves. Like, I don't want to give away like the full ending, but it's.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
it's Quentin Tarantino. I mean, it's going to be.
Oh, that's going to be good. All right. I'm glad I wrote it down. I'm going to watch that. She was a beautiful young white pregnant actress. Oh, for the questions I was asking. Yeah.
Well, I mean, all the victims were white.
I always thought the La Biancas were, oh no, they were Italian, weren't they? I think.
They were trying to start a race war, so they wanted it to look like the killers were black. That was the goal there.
Yes, yeah, well, that worked out. Ruined people's lives. Don't be sorry that you're late. No. There you go. There's some questions for you.
When did your mother first tell you about me? I was 15. Let's see. Did she tell you or did you find out? Was she worried about telling others? No, I was 15 when she told me. I didn't know who Manson was. I wasn't familiar with the case at all, and I learned about it very slowly. It was a lot to take in. It was very weird that I could look up my mom in a bookstore or the school library or books at the house that I didn't even realize she was in.
Yeah, that would have been kind of cool though.
Some of it was very I mean some of it was interesting. I did like going with her to be interviewed later on, but once we kind of came back from that, it was definite nobody can know type. I mean, some people knew. We did have close friends that knew, but
Yeah.
it wasn't something that could be shared or talked about openly. And I think keeping that a secret was also hard.
I would imagine.
And it was because my mom lived with the killers. That part of that biggest fear was that she would be seen as one of them. You know, that phrase, you are who you hang with.
Yes. Yeah, I get that too. But she was, yeah, but your mom was completely not in it, right? Whereas Linda, I'm sorry, she was at both murder scenes. She drove the getaway car. Like, come on. That's what pissed me off about her.
Did your mom go through years of... Yeah, she went through, I mean, we both kind of did like therapy stuff for other reasons as well, just kind of off and on. But yeah, that was something that my mom was still processing even until she died. I mean, Manson died months before my mother did. And I remember telling her, and her reaction to that, she was pretty quiet. It was pretty weird that he was actually dead for her.
Yeah.
This is a monster that was just always there.
Now he's gone. I mean, I would hope that would limit the stress or her thoughts and feelings a bit. You know, the monster's gone. Hello, Beaver. Yeah. It's been a good read so far. I really do like this book.
Yeah, a little bit further, you'll reach the part where it talks about my mother, and I guess then I'll tell you who she is.
Yeah, and we're gonna wait. I think that's a good idea. Yeah, just wait until we get to the good part, right?
Although Brittany has been on
The ball.
on the ball so well with these comments, she's probably figured it out.
Probably has. Shh, Brittany. You were a blessing to your mom. You probably were.
Oh,
Probably.
thank you. She used to say like the best revenge is your own personal success.
Oh,
So
yeah.
she would always say, my success too is also her revenge as well.
Oh, yeah.
Who, me? No.
Yeah, you. She probably does know. But yeah. I wouldn't tell anyone ever. Crazy people could have wanted to hurt her. Sorry for your loss, Artsy. That's what Sam just said.
Now, there are people still connected to this that some members of victims' families that to this day are still getting death threats.
Holy shit. That's so not right. Do you get hate ever?
No, my mom did a pretty good job of, moving far away from that location and staying, pretty obscure. We'd just fly out, do like an interview, and it was usually just to keep somebody in jail. My mom went probably like 20, 30 years and didn't tell anybody.
Mm-hmm. It's Quentin Tarantino, enough said. Right? Exactly. Mara says it's very interesting and horrific at the same time to know, see, and witness the evil in this world. I think that's why I'm into true crime, because it is horrific, but it's interesting and it's fascinating, but it's horrible. It's like good versus evil, I guess, in a book. I don't know how to explain that.
I grew up very into history. My mom was a history nerd, I guess you could say, and my grandmother was a librarian. So we were very bookish and we were very much into history. And I just, I kind of, looking back, I was like, oh, well, you were in part of history. So that makes a little bit more sense.
I was the only person in my whole family, like out of 4 siblings, and even my mom. I'm the only one that read for fun.
Oh, really?
I still do. I try and read at least every night. My grandmother does. Me and her do. But she's oh my God, I laugh at her. I call her a pervert because she reads these romance novels where there's like action in it and stuff.
Oh my goodness.
Gramps, I read a paragraph. You're sick. See, I love that one, Brittany. I love that movie. I thought it was really good. Why didn't you like it, Britt?
Yeah, my mom would read stories to me when I was a kid. The bedtime stories or whatnot. And, some of it was the usual ones, kids growing up in like the 80s and 90s, it was like Anne of Green Gables or Little House on the Prairie when I was yeah. But then it was other times too where it was like history, and it'd be like, okay, pick a wife of Henry VIII. And that would be like my bedtime story. Would be like, and then he chopped off her head. Good night. And I loved it. I had no choice but to grow up to be a history nerd. I loved it.
Yeah. That movie is stupid.
Oh.
Yeah, they don't like that Haunting of Sharon Tate. I guess I'm like the only one that does. I might change my mind though after I read this whole book. I'll probably like, fuck that movie. They lie or something. It was the editing that you didn't like? No bad feelings for Hilary Duff. I thought she did amazing. Hilary did. She had like the whole Sharon down pat, even the way she talked. Yeah, no hard feelings. So you just didn't like the editing. Okay. Is there any more questions, guys? If not, I'm just going to end this live. I just try and keep it at 2 hours. Plus, I think I need a big drink of water and an Advil. My throat's starting to bug me. Thank you for coming on.
You're welcome.
I know Laura was the worst. I hated her too. I did not like her. Nope. I can't even really say why. I think everyone hated Laura.
I don't remember too much of Little House on the Prairie. I remember more of Anne of Green Gables.
Yeah, I remember they used to, like, in my household, they'd watch Little House on the Prairie. I thought, why the hell are we watching something that happened hundreds and millions of years ago, I'd say, because it was like living like pilgrims and stuff. And I was like, why do I have to watch this? Can we not watch something with the times? Like, I hated it. I was really mean about it. Yeah, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. You didn't seem like it was about Manson. Ah, gotcha. Well, no, because it was, I mean, he was in it, yes, but it was more The Haunting of Sharon Tate. It was from her perspective. That's why. It was supposed to be about, because I guess she used to get visions and stuff like that. Like, what the hell you call those things? Not a preconception.
Premonition.
Thank you. Premonitions. I guess she used to get them and it would come true. And she had saw this in that movie. Apparently she saw this in her mind, what was going to happen to her and her friends. And she tried warning them and told them they have to leave, and they didn't leave. Now, I don't know if that's true or if this is just for the movie.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, so that
There's a lot of artistic license in a lot of these.
Yeah. Anna was the older one, right? The oldest sister. Was it Anna? Or no, it was Mary. I think I liked Mary. I did not like Laura. Everyone hates Laura. All right, I think I'm going to end this. You guys have a great night. Not as white as Tate and some people. Oh, okay, I get what you're saying, Nursling. I would read the Christmas story of her, and she got peppermint sticks, a cup to share with Mary, and a penny. They always got way more. Told them to be thankful. Yeah. All right, you guys have a great night. I'm going to get out of here.
Yeah, and if anyone has any more questions, leave them under the comments under this video too. I'll take it.
Yes, please do.
For next week.
Yeah, and I'll keep an eye out, and if there is any, I'll let you know, and then you can go in there and answer them. Actually, that's a good idea, too. Oh, I should write under them and pin my comment and saying, I don't know, what the hell should I say? Ask away. The nurse is here.
Leave comments. No comment or no questions about nursing, though, please.
Yeah. All right. I will. Well, I'll probably talk to you shortly here.
Yeah.
All right. You have a good night, everybody, and we'll see you next Thursday at 7. Bye.
Bye.